I'm Cassandra, 32, standing in the foyer of my beautiful 3-bedroom lakeside home that I purchased entirely on my own. 5 years ago, I was homeless after my parents threw me out for refusing to give my college fund to my golden child brother, Adam. Now, they demanded I host his lavish wedding here, and when I refused, they planned to ambush me anyway with 150 guests. They had no idea what I arranged in response. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from and subscribe to hear how I turned the tables on my family. Growing up in Portland, Oregon wasn't supposed to be the emotional battlefield it became. My parents, Martha and Richard, seemed like normal middle-class professionals from the outside. Dad worked as a hospital administrator, climbing the ranks through sheer determination and networking skills. Mom sold real estate, specializing in upscale properties that she could never afford herself, but loved to showcase to wealthy clients. Our family looked picture-perfect in holiday cards, but appearances were deeply deceiving. Everything changed when my brother Adam was born when I was 3 years old. I was too young to understand at first, but as the years passed, the pattern became painfully obvious. Adam wasn't just loved, he was worshipped. Every milestone, every achievement, every whim catered to while I faded into the background of our family portrait. I still remember the afternoon I brought home my report card in 6th grade, straight A's across every subject. I had worked so hard, staying up late to study while maintaining my responsibilities around the house. Mom glanced at it, said, "Good job," without enthusiasm, and placed it on the counter under a pile of mail. That same evening, Adam came home with his report card full of C's and 1 B-. Dad took us all out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement, while my achievement collected dust under the electric bill. My high school graduation was scheduled for June 15th, and for once I thought I might be the center of attention. I had been named valedictorian, and Mom had reluctantly agreed to host a small party afterward. 3 days before graduation, Adam sprained his ankle during a recreational soccer game. Nothing serious, just a minor injury that required ice and elevation. My graduation party was immediately cancelled so both parents could tend to Adam's every need during his recovery. I sat alone in my room the night after graduation, still wearing my honors cords, scrolling through social media posts of classmates celebrating with their families. While I took the public bus to my part-time job at 16, Adam received a brand new Ford Mustang for his 16th birthday. He needs reliable transportation for all his activities, Dad explained when I questioned the fairness. My activities, including honor society and volunteer work, apparently didn't warrant the same consideration. The final insult was sharing my bedroom with visiting relatives, while Adam's room remained his private sanctuary. "Girls are better at adapting," Mom would say when I protested. I would come home to find my personal items moved, my bed occupied by an aunt or cousin, forcing me to sleep on the living room couch during family visits. Adam never had to sacrifice his space for anyone. Despite the constant reminders of my second-class status in the family, I developed a passion for architecture and design. I would sketch buildings during lunch breaks at school, create cardboard models in the garage when my parents were focused on Adam, and check out library books about famous architects. This passion became my escape, the one area of my life where I felt in control and appreciated, even if only by myself. When college application time arrived, I threw myself into essays and interviews, knowing financial support from my parents would be minimal, if existent at all. My efforts paid off with a partial scholarship to a respected university with an excellent architecture program. The scholarship covered about 60% of the tuition, leaving a significant gap that needed to be filled. "We can't afford to help you," Dad stated flatly when I showed him the financial aid package. "We need to save for Adam's education." The irony was that Adam showed little interest in academics and had mediocre grades at best. Still, my parents had apparently been saving a college fund for me as well, though I had never been told about it directly. The truth came out during my sophomore year of college. I was working 3 jobs to stay afloat, barely sleeping 4 hours a night while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I came home during spring break to discover Adam had just returned from a month-long European trip paid for by my parents. When I questioned how they could afford such an extravagance when they couldn't help with my education, Mom accidentally revealed they had used some of your college money because Adam needed this experience for his personal growth. The argument that followed was nuclear. For the first time in my life, I stood up for myself completely, letting out 2 decades of hurt and resentment. I called out the blatant favoritism, the constant dismissal of my needs and achievements, and the fundamental unfairness of using money that had been supposedly set aside for my education. "If you don't like how we parent, you can leave," Dad finally shouted, his face red with anger. Not because he recognized his wrongdoing, but because I had dared to challenge the family dynamic. "Fine," I replied, a strange calm washing over me. "I will. I'll never forget packing my belongings into black garbage bags because no one offered to help me find proper luggage." Adam watched silently from his doorway, his expression unreadable as I made trip after trip to load my old Honda Civic with everything I could fit. Neither of my parents came out of their bedroom during this process, their closed door a final statement on how little my departure affected them. As I pulled out of the driveway for the last time at 20 years old, I glanced back at the house where I had never truly been wanted. Adam stood in the window, one hand slightly raised, but he never came out to say goodbye. The first few months after leaving home were the hardest of my life. My meager savings quickly evaporated between gas, food, and other basic necessities. My old Honda became both transportation and shelter. I would park in different Walmart lots each night, keeping my student ID and textbooks hidden under the seat, trying to maintain the appearance of a normal college student during the day while homeless at night. Showering at the campus gym, changing clothes in public restrooms, and eating whatever was cheapest became my new routine. I picked up extra shifts at my campus jobs, but it wasn't enough for housing in the expensive college town. The partial scholarship that had once seemed like such a blessing barely covered tuition, leaving nothing for living expenses now that I was completely on my own. After nearly 3 months of this precarious existence, a classmate noticed me washing my hair in the sink of the architecture building's bathroom. Lucia, a vibrant international student with kind eyes, didn't judge me, but instead offered a solution. She and 3 other students had a house off campus with a tiny storage room they weren't using. "It's not much," she admitted, "but it has a window and we could fit a mattress in there." That small room, barely bigger than a walk-in closet, felt like a palace after living in my car. My 4 roommates charged me minimal rent, and for the first time since leaving home, I could sleep horizontally without having to curl up in a car seat. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but it provided stability and safety I desperately needed. It was during a late-night studio session that I met Professor Eleanor Thompson. She had stayed late to review senior projects and found me working alone, refining a design long after my classmates had left. Instead of simply checking my work and moving on, she pulled up a chair. "I've been watching your progress," she said, studying my detailed sketches. "You have natural talent, but there's something else in your work, resilience. Every design you create solves multiple problems simultaneously, as if you're used to working with limited resources." Her observation hit so close to home that tears welled up in my eyes before I could stop them. Professor Thompson didn't press for details, but she offered me a tissue and her business card. "I have connections at Westlake Architecture. They're looking for an intern who thinks differently. The pay isn't much, but the experience is invaluable." That internship became my lifeline. Working 20 hours a week at Westlake while maintaining my other jobs and full-time student status was exhausting. But for the first time, I was doing something aligned with my passion. The modest internship salary combined with my other income eventually allowed me to move from the storage room to sharing a proper bedroom in a different apartment. Balancing it all wasn't easy. I would go from classes to my campus job to the internship, then work on assignments until 2 or 3 in the morning, catching a few hours of sleep before starting again. Weekends were filled with shifts at a local coffee shop. There were moments I nearly broke from exhaustion, but the alternative, giving up and proving my parents right, was unthinkable. When graduation day finally arrived, I walked across the stage with honors, my name called to silence where other students had cheering sections. Professor Eleanor stood up and applauded loudly from the faculty section, joined by Lucia and my other roommates. Their support meant everything, though the empty seats I had reserved for family remained a painful reminder of my reality. After the ceremony, Professor Eleanor introduced me to her husband, James, a kind-hearted software engineer who immediately treated me with the warmth my own father never had. "We're having a small celebration at our house," Eleanor said. "Nothing fancy, but we'd love for you to join us." That impromptu graduation dinner with Eleanor, James, Lucia, and a few other close connections became the first of many gatherings that would define my chosen family. The early years of my career brought their own struggles. Entry-level positions in architecture paid modestly, and I was starting with nothing. No family safety net to fall back on. I lived frugally, shared apartments with multiple roommates, and continued working side jobs to build my savings. Each small promotion felt like a major victory. Each positive performance review a validation that I was on the right path despite the obstacles. James and Lucia became my constant supporters. When I was passed over for a promotion I deserved, they listened to my frustrations over homemade dinner. When I received my first design award, they were the ones who took me out to celebrate. We spent holidays together, creating new traditions that helped ease the pain of family estrangement. At Eleanor's suggestion, I began seeing a therapist to address the trauma of my childhood and abandonment. Dr. Mitchell helped me understand that the favoritism I had experienced wasn't my fault, that my parents' behavior reflected their own issues rather than any deficiency in me. Therapy gave me tools to process my anger and grief, though healing would prove to be a long journey with no quick fixes. Through it all, I maintained a singular focus on building the life I wanted. I saved diligently, lived below my means, and invested in my future. By my late 20s, I had advanced to a senior designer position at a respected firm, earned my architectural license, and built a solid professional reputation. 8 years after being thrown out of my childhood home, I achieved what once seemed impossible. After months of searching, mortgage applications, and negotiations, I found my dream home, a beautiful 3-bedroom house overlooking a small lake just outside the city. The property needed work, but its bones were solid, and its location was perfect. Using my design skills, I gradually renovated each room, turning it into a showcase of my personal style and professional abilities. The day I received the keys remains one of the most emotional moments of my life. Standing alone in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through large windows onto hardwood floors, I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by how far I had come. From sleeping in my car to owning a home most people twice my age would envy. I had built a life my parents never believed I could have. Throughout these years, the complete silence from my biological family was both painful and freeing. No birthday calls, no holiday cards, not even a text message to check if I was alive. Sometimes the absence hurt more than active rejection would have, the indifference confirming how little I had mattered in their lives. Other times the distance felt protective, allowing me to grow without their constant undermining of my worth. Each Thanksgiving, Christmas, and other holiday became an opportunity to strengthen bonds with my chosen family. James and Eleanor often hosted gatherings that grew to include friends, colleagues, and other strays without traditional family connections. Lucia, who had become my best friend, brought cultural traditions from her own background, creating multicultural celebrations that felt more authentic than the tense, performative holidays of my childhood. By my early 30s, I had built a life filled with meaningful work, genuine relationships, and a home that represented security and accomplishment. The journey hadn't been easy, but I had found peace despite my family's abandonment. Or so I thought, until an unexpected phone call shattered the boundaries I had carefully constructed. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in April when my phone rang with an unknown number. Typically, I would let such calls go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. The voice on the other end sent a chill through my body despite the warm spring air. "Cassandra, it's Mom." 7 years of silence broken with those 3 simple words spoken as casually as if we had talked last week. My hand gripped the phone tighter as I struggled to respond, my heart racing with unexpected adrenaline. "I'm surprised to hear from you," I finally managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Well, it's been a while," she replied. The understatement so enormous it would have been comical in any other context. No apology for years of absence. No acknowledgement of how they had thrown me out. Just, it's been a while. As if we had simply lost touch due to busy schedules rather than family trauma. How are you? She continued, her tone artificially bright. Are you still doing that drawing thing? Architecture. Right. I'm a licensed architect now, I replied, wondering if she had even bothered to search for me online before calling. A simple Google search would have shown my professional achievements, the awards my designs had won, the magazine features about my work. That's nice, dear, she said dismissively, clearly uninterested in my answer. So, I have some exciting news. Adam is engaged. Her name is Bridget Williams. Her father owns that chain of luxury car dealerships across the Northwest, the Prestige Auto Group. You know, the one. They're a wonderful family, very connected. Of course, Adam had managed to find a partner from a wealthy family. The golden child continued his charmed trajectory apparently. That's nice, I echoed her earlier dismissal, wondering why she had really called after all this time. The wedding is planned for June 12th, she continued, not picking up on my coolness. It's going to be quite the event. 3-day celebration, very exclusive. Good for them, I replied, still waiting for the real purpose of this call to emerge. It didn't take long. The thing is, her voice shifted to what I recognized as her persuasive tone, the one she used on reluctant real estate clients. There's been a small issue with the venue. The Lakeside Country Club double booked, and the other party has seniority. We've been scrambling to find an alternative that meets Bridget's vision. I felt a sinking sensation, suddenly understanding where this conversation was heading. Your father and I saw pictures of your house online. That real estate website, what's it called? Zillow. The lake views are stunning and the property size seems perfect. We thought it would be the ideal solution to host the wedding there. The audacity left me momentarily speechless. After 7 years of complete silence, after throwing me out of their lives, my parents' first contact was to demand use of my home for the golden child's wedding. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want to host Adam's wedding at my house? With how many guests? Around 150, she replied casually, as if requesting to borrow a cup of sugar. The ceremony would be Friday evening, reception Saturday, and a farewell brunch Sunday. We'd need access Thursday for setup, of course. Mom, I said, the word feeling foreign on my tongue after so many years. That's not going to work. This is my home, not an event venue. It's a perfect location, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. The wedding party would need to use all 3 bedrooms. You could stay with friends for the weekend, right? The Williams are willing to pay for professional cleaning afterward. The presumption was staggering. Not only did they want my entire house, but they expected me to vacate my own home for 5 days. I'm not comfortable with this, I stated firmly. I'm sorry about their venue issues, but my home isn't available. Her tone shifted instantly, warmth evaporating like morning dew under harsh sunlight. It's time to get over the past, Cassandra. That's what family does. They help each other. Adam would do it for you. Would he? I asked, genuinely curious if she actually believed that. The same Adam who watched me pack my belongings in garbage bags and said nothing. The Adam who benefited from my college fund. That was years ago, she snapped. You always were one to hold grudges. This is your chance to be part of the family again. I've built my own family, I replied. People who actually care about me. My answer is no. I heard rustling, and then my father's voice came on the line, gruff and authoritative as ever. Cassandra, don't be difficult. This wedding is important for connections that could benefit all of us. All of us. Dad, you haven't spoken to me in 7 years. You threw me out. You don't get to suddenly appear and make demands about my property. There could be consequences to refusing, he said, his voice lowering to that threatening tone I remembered from childhood confrontations. The Williams family is very influential. Are you actually threatening me right now? I asked, amazed at how little had changed. I'm an adult with my own life. Your threats have no power anymore. There was a pause. Then Adam's voice came on the line. "Cass, it's me." Hearing my brother's voice after so many years sent an unexpected wave of emotion through me. Despite everything, there had been moments in our childhood when he had shown kindness, brief interludes, when we had been just siblings rather than rival and favorite. "Hey, Adam," I said, softening slightly. "It would really help us out," he said, his tone uncomfortable. "Bridget's really stressed about finding a new venue." "I understand that's difficult," I acknowledged. "But having 150 strangers in my personal space isn't something I'm willing to do. Surely with the Williams family connections, they can find an appropriate venue." "Mom and Dad said you'd probably be difficult about it," he sighed. "Look, just think about it." "Okay, I have thought about it," I replied firmly. "The answer is no. Congratulations on your engagement, but my home is not available." I ended the call, hands shaking with adrenaline and long-buried emotions. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with text messages from my mother, alternating between guilt trips and anger. I turned off notifications and poured myself a glass of wine, trying to process the unexpected contact and outrageous demand. Later that night, I called James and Lucia, needing to vent about the surreal conversation. They listened sympathetically as I recounted the details, expressing appropriate outrage at my parents' entitlement. "The nerve of them," Lucia fumed. "See, 7 years of nothing and then they want to use your house." "They always did see me as a resource rather than a person," I said. The insight from years of therapy helping me articulate what had always been true. "I'm just surprised they think I would actually agree." "Are you okay?" James asked, always perceptive about emotional undercurrents. Hearing from them after all this time must have been jarring regardless of what they wanted. "I'm rattled," I admitted, but also weirdly validated. All these years of therapy talking about their toxic behavior and then they prove everything I've said with one phone call. None of us realized then that the phone call was just the opening salvo in what would become a much larger battle. My parents had never accepted no from me before, and they weren't about to start now, especially with something they deemed as important as Adam's wedding to a wealthy family. The next morning, my phone was flooded with voicemails and text messages, not just from my parents, but from aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Apparently, my parents had mobilized the entire extended family to pressure me. "Your poor brother has been planning this wedding for months," Aunt Susan's voicemail lamented. "Family needs to come first, Cassandra. We've all been wondering where you've been all these years," Uncle Robert's message began, conveniently forgetting that none of them had reached out after my parents threw me out. "It's time to come back to the fold and do the right thing." Each message carried the same theme. I was selfish for not allowing my home to be used. I was holding on to childish grudges. I needed to grow up and help family. Not one person acknowledged the years of abandonment or questioned why my parents couldn't find another venue. Just as I was silencing my phone to focus on work, an email notification appeared from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "About the wedding venue, sister-in-law to be." Bridget Williams, Adam's fiancée, had decided to try her hand at persuasion. Her message was masterfully crafted, beginning with sympathy for whatever family issues existed in the past, then pivoting to how meaningful it would be to begin healing those wounds through her and Adam's celebration of love. She described her vision for the wedding, complete with floating lanterns on the lake and string quartets on the lawn. She emphasized how perfect my quaint home would be, though photos showed it was larger and more elegant than she acknowledged. "We would of course compensate you for any inconvenience," she wrote, "though I'm sure the joy of reuniting with family and being part of our special day would be the greatest reward." Her tone struck me as condescending and manipulative, clearly informed by my parents' version of events. She ended with a none too subtle reminder of her family's influence, mentioning her father's close relationships with several architectural firms in the region. Something about her email prompted me to search social media for information about the wedding. What I found left me cold. The wedding already had a dedicated Instagram account, and scrolling through recent posts revealed several photos that had clearly been taken from just beyond my property line. Someone had been physically scouting my home without my knowledge. Even more disturbing was the wedding website, which I found linked from Bridget's Instagram. Their inelegant script over a photo of my backyard in Lakeview were the details of a 3-day celebration at a family estate. The address wasn't listed publicly, but a password-protected section presumably contained this information for invited guests. The schedule detailed everything from Thursday setup to Sunday brunch with activities planned throughout my property, including areas that would require access to the interior of my home. They had mapped out use of my master bedroom as the bridal suite, guest rooms for immediate family, and transformation of my living and dining areas into reception space. All of this had been planned without my consent or knowledge. The realization sent a wave of violation through me, as if my boundaries had been not just crossed, but completely disregarded. I immediately called Adam, bypassing our parents to confront him directly. "Why are there photos of my property on your wedding website?" I demanded when he answered. "And why does it look like you've already planned to use my home when I explicitly said no?" His hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. "Look, Cass, it wasn't my idea. Mom and Dad convinced Bridget it would work out." "Work out how?" I said no, clearly and unambiguously. Adam sighed heavily. "They think if they just show up with everyone, you won't make a scene. You'll feel pressured to go along with it rather than turn away 150 people, including Bridget's family." The calculation was so coldly manipulative that it momentarily took my breath away. They planned to ambush me, to force my hand by creating a situation where I would be the villain for enforcing my own boundaries. "They told Bridget and her parents that you're thrilled to host, but like to play hard to get initially," Adam admitted, sounding uncomfortable. "They're convinced you'll come around, especially once you see how important this connection is for the family." "And you went along with this?" I asked, hurt despite everything. "You know what they did to me, Adam. You were there." "I didn't have much choice," he said weakly. "You know how they are. And Bridget's family is, well, they're used to getting what they want. So are our parents," I replied coldly. "But not this time. I want you to understand something clearly, Adam. I will not be hosting your wedding. Not by choice and certainly not by ambush. If you all show up here expecting to take over my property, you will be turned away. I will not be manipulated or bullied. Not anymore." "Cass, please," he started, but I cut him off. "No, for once in your life, you need to deal with disappointment. Find another venue, and tell our parents that their plan has failed. I know about it now and I will be prepared." I ended the call, hands shaking with anger and anxiety. The audacity of their plan was stunning, yet completely in character for my parents. They had always steamrolled over my feelings and boundaries, always assumed they could control situations through manipulation and social pressure. But I wasn't a powerless child or vulnerable young adult anymore. That evening, I had an emergency session with my therapist, Drive Mitchell, who validated my feelings of violation and anger. "This is an extraordinary breach of boundaries," she agreed. "Your reaction is completely appropriate. The question now is how you want to respond." "Part of me wants to just leave town that weekend," I admitted, avoid the confrontation entirely. "But another part feels like this is a defining moment. If I run away, I'm still letting them control me through fear." "Those are both valid options," she assured me. "There's no single right way to handle this. What matters is that you make a choice that aligns with your values and protects your well-being." After the therapy session, I invited James, Lucia, and my neighbor Thomas over for an emergency dinner meeting. Thomas, a retired judge who had become a friend and occasional mentor, listened intently as I explained the situation. "This is trespassing, plain and simple," he stated firmly. "You have every legal right to prevent unauthorized use of your property." "I can't believe they would go this far," Lucia said, outraged on my behalf. "To plan an ambush wedding. Who does that?" "People who have never respected boundaries," James observed. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" The four of us brainstormed options late into the night. Each suggestion was considered from the simple act of being away that weekend with a locked house to more creative responses. What began as a defensive strategy gradually evolved into something more meaningful, a way to not just protect myself, but to make a statement about who I had become despite my family's treatment. "Whatever you decide," Thomas said, As the evening concluded, "We'll support you. You're not alone in this." Looking at the 3 concerned faces around my dining table, I felt a surge of gratitude for the family I had chosen. Unlike my biological relatives, these people respected my autonomy, valued my feelings, and showed up when I needed them. With their support, I began to formulate a plan that would not only thwart my parents' scheme, but transform it into something meaningful on my own terms. The next morning, I contacted Diane Hargrove, an attorney recommended by Thomas. She specialized in property law and had experience with restraining orders and trespassing issues. After explaining my situation, she laid out my legal options. "Your property rights are quite clear," she explained. "No one can use your land or home without permission, family or otherwise. We can file a cease and desist letter immediately, making your position official." "What about the day itself?" I asked. "If they ignore the legal warning and show up anyway, we can coordinate with local police in advance," she advised. "File documentation explaining the potential trespassing situation. That way, if you need to call them on the day, they'll already understand the context." Following her advice, I began the process of legally protecting my property. The cease and desist letter was drafted and sent by certified mail to my parents, Adam and Bridget's parents. I also filed the appropriate documentation with the local police department, explaining the potential for a large group of uninvited people attempting to access my property. But legal protection was just the beginning. If my family was determined enough to plan an ambush wedding, they might be willing to create a scene regardless of legal warnings. I needed physical security measures as well. I contacted a reputable security company that specialized in event management. After explaining the unusual circumstances, they recommended a temporary fencing solution that could be installed the day before and removed after the weekend, along with 2 professional security guards stationed at the entrance to my property. "We'll handle any confrontations professionally," the security manager assured me. "Our team is trained to de-escalate situations while firmly enforcing access restrictions." Next came documentation. I installed additional security cameras covering all approaches to my property, ensuring that any attempted trespassing would be recorded. These feeds could be monitored remotely, giving me awareness of the situation even if I chose not to be physically present. While these protective measures gave me peace of mind, they still left me in a defensive position. After discussion with my support circle, I decided to transform this challenge into an opportunity for something positive. James was the one who suggested involving Hope Harbor, a local charity supporting homeless youth that I had been volunteering with for the past few years. My own experience with homelessness had made their mission particularly meaningful to me, and I had been helping with their housing assistance program. "What if," James proposed, "instead of just blocking your family's event, you host a legitimate event of your own, something meaningful that reflects your values?" The idea resonated deeply. I contacted Maria Sanchez, the executive director of Hope Harbor, and explained the unusual situation. Rather than being put off by the circumstances, she was enthusiastic about the possibility. "We've been wanting to host a spring fundraiser," she said. "Your lakeside property would be perfect for a garden party type event. Nothing too large. Maybe 60 to 70 people focused on raising awareness and funds for our new transitional housing project." The synchronicity was perfect. Instead of 150 wedding guests invading my space, I would welcome supporters of a cause close to my heart, people who understood the value of safe housing and respected boundaries. I reached out to my neighbors as well, explaining the situation and ensuring they were aware of both the potential disruption from my family and my alternative plans. To my surprise and gratitude, they rallied around me. Several offered to help with the charity event, while others promised to alert me if they noticed any suspicious activity around my property in the days leading up to the planned date. Taking the plan a step further, I contacted local media about covering the charity fundraiser. 2 local news outlets and a popular community blog expressed interest in the human interest story of a successful architect hosting an event to support homeless youth. While I didn't share the full family drama with the reporters, the scheduled media presence would add another layer of protection against my parents' plans. With the charity event scheduled, I worked with Maria to create banners and signage that would make it immediately clear to anyone arriving that this was an official Hope Harbor fundraiser, not a wedding venue. Large welcome signs, information booths about youth homelessness, and donation stations would be set up at the entrance to my property. Throughout this planning period, I continued working with Dr. Mitchell to prepare emotionally for the potential confrontation. We role-played various scenarios, practiced grounding techniques for managing anxiety, and developed clear scripts for what I would say if faced with my parents' manipulation attempts. Remember, drive, Mitchell emphasized, you are setting a healthy boundary. Their reaction to that boundary is not your responsibility. You can be firm without being cruel, clear without being combative. James, Lucia, and several other close friends arranged to be present on the day, creating a supportive buffer between me and any family drama that might unfold. They divided responsibilities, ensuring that both the legitimate charity event could proceed smoothly and any unwanted visitors could be intercepted before reaching me. 2 days before the planned date, I received an unexpected text from my cousin Megan, the only family member who had occasionally kept in touch over the years, though always cautiously to avoid angering my parents. Just heard about the wedding plans, she wrote. Wanted to warn you they're still planning to show up at your place around 3 p.m. on Friday. About 30 people coming early for setup, including caterers. The rest arriving Saturday morning. They're telling everyone, you've finally seen reason. Be prepared. I thanked her for the warning, though it only confirmed what I already suspected. Despite the legal notices and lack of response from me, my parents were proceeding with their plan, apparently convinced their show of force would overcome my resistance. The night before the planned wedding day, I checked and double-checked all preparations. The temporary fencing had been installed, creating a clear demarcation of my property boundaries with a single controlled entry point. Security cameras were functioning, monitoring services activated. The security team would arrive early morning, followed by the Hope Harbor volunteers to set up the fundraiser. As I walked through my quiet house that evening, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness for the family relationships that had been irreparably damaged. Anger at the continued disrespect, but also pride in the person I had become despite it all. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it on my terms, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me, supporting a cause that mattered. I fell asleep that night with a surprising sense of calm. For perhaps the first time since childhood, I was fully standing in my power, refusing to be diminished or controlled by my family's toxic patterns. Tomorrow would be challenging, but it would also be liberating. Friday dawned clear and mild, perfect weather for an outdoor event. I woke early, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness fluttering in my stomach. By 7 a.m., the security team had arrived and established their positions at the property entrance. By 8, the first Hope Harbor volunteers were setting up tables, arranging flowers, and placing signage throughout the front lawn and driveway. Maria arrived with a team of youth program participants, all wearing Hope Harbor t-shirts and eager to help with the fundraiser preparations. Watching them transform my property into a welcoming event space filled me with a sense of rightness. This was how my home should be used, for something meaningful and positive, not as a battleground for family manipulation. Around 10 a.m., the first media representatives arrived. A reporter and photographer from the local newspaper doing a preview of the fundraiser for the weekend edition. They interviewed Maria about Hope Harbor's mission, took photos of the setup, and asked me about my involvement with the organization. As someone who experienced housing insecurity myself, I explained carefully, navigating my personal history without revealing too much. I understand how crucial stable housing is for young people trying to build their futures. Hosting this event is a way to give back and raise awareness for an issue that's often invisible in our community. By noon, the fundraiser was fully set up and looking beautiful. 60 folding chairs faced a small podium near the lake with the water providing a stunning backdrop. Information booths about youth homelessness statistics and Hope Harbor's programs lined the winding driveway. A refreshment area offered donated pastries and coffee. String lights had been strung between trees, ready to create a magical atmosphere as evening approached. Everything was ready for the official start of the fundraiser at 2 p.m., 1 hour before my family's planned arrival, according to my cousin's intelligence. My support team was in place, James and Lucia positioned near the entrance. Other friends dispersed throughout the property. I felt as prepared as possible for the confrontation ahead. At 2:45, just as the fundraiser was getting underway with about 40 attendees present, the security team radioed that several vehicles had pulled up outside the gate. Looking at the security camera feed on my phone, I saw my parents' luxury SUV at the front of a small convoy of cars and catering vans. "They're here," I told Maria, who squeezed my arm supportively. "We've got this," she assured me. "Just follow the plan." I watched on the camera feed as my father approached the security guard at the gate, gesturing impatiently. Even without audio, I could read his body language, the entitled expectation of immediate compliance. The security guard remained calm, pointing to the signage about the private charity event, and presumably explaining that they were not on the guest list. My mother joined my father, her animated gestures becoming increasingly agitated as she faced continued refusal. Behind them, I could see Adam and a woman I assumed was Bridget emerging from another vehicle along with an older couple likely to be Bridget's parents. More cars continued to arrive, creating a growing cluster of confused wedding guests in elegant attire. Channel 2 reports wedding guests attempting to access from the lakeside, came a voice over the security radio. My backup plan of having a second security team monitoring the waterfront access was proving necessary. "Time to make an appearance?" James asked, approaching with Lucia beside him. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's go." The three of us walked calmly toward the front gate where the confrontation was escalating. As we approached, I could hear my father's voice loud and commanding. "This is a private family event," he was insisting. "We have permission from the homeowner." "No, you don't," I said clearly as we reached the gate. My father turned, momentary surprise flickering across his face before settling into a stern expression. "Cassandra, enough games. We have guests arriving. Open the gate immediately." "This is not a game," I replied evenly. "This is a legitimate charity fundraiser for Hope Harbor, an organization supporting homeless youth. It's been planned for weeks, and these are my invited guests." I gestured to Maria, who had joined us at the gate. "I'm Maria Sanchez, Executive Director of Hope Harbor," she introduced herself professionally. "We're so grateful to Cassandra for hosting our spring fundraiser. Are you interested in making a donation to support our programs?" My mother's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. We've planned Adam's wedding here. The caterers are waiting. People have traveled from out of state. I never agreed to host any wedding," I stated firmly. "In fact, I explicitly refused when you called me. You received a legal cease and desist letter, making my position clear. This property is my private residence, not a wedding venue. We're family," my father growled, his voice lowering threateningly. "You can't do this to your own brother." "Family respects boundaries," I replied. "Family doesn't plan to ambush someone at their own home. Family doesn't throw someone out and then expect to use their property years later." A news van pulled up behind the growing crowd of wedding guests, a local television reporter having arrived to cover the charity event, but now witnessing the unfolding drama. My father noticed the camera and modulated his tone, though his eyes remained hard. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding," he said, more for the benefit of onlookers than to me. "We can work this out privately, Cassandra." "There's no misunderstanding," I countered. "You plan to force your way onto my property despite my clear refusal. You told Adam's fiancée and her family that I had agreed when I hadn't. You misled all these guests." I gestured to the growing crowd of confused wedding attendees. "That was your choice, not mine." Bridget pushed forward, her face tight with controlled anger. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? All of our friends and family are here. The rehearsal dinner is supposed to be tonight. I'm sorry you were misled," I said sincerely. "But that responsibility lies with the people who told you this location was confirmed when it wasn't." An elegant older woman who must have been Bridget's mother joined the conversation. "Bridget, what's happening? Where's the estate you showed us in the photos?" "This is it, Mother," Bridget replied tensely. "Apparently, there's been a complication." "Complication?" A distinguished gray-haired man in an expensive suit stepped forward, clearly Bridget's father. You mean to tell me this entire wedding venue isn't actually secured? That all these arrangements were made without proper permission? He turned to my parents, his expression hardening as he assessed the situation. Did you misrepresent this arrangement to us, Richard, Martha? Because it appears you've brought 150 people to a property where we're not welcome. My father attempted to salvage the situation. It's a family matter, Harold. Just a bit of dramatics from Cassandra. She's always been difficult. I'm not being difficult, I stated clearly. I'm enforcing normal boundaries around my private property. I never agreed to host this wedding. I made that clear from the beginning. The television reporter had moved closer, clearly intrigued by the unfolding drama. My mother noticed and plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, she suggested, gesturing away from the growing audience. There's nothing to discuss, I replied firmly. The Hope Harbor fundraiser will continue as planned. You'll need to find another venue for the wedding. At this point, Bridget nearly screeched. Everything is here. The flowers, the caterers, the guests. I understand this is upsetting, I acknowledged. But this situation wasn't created by me. I was clear about my boundaries. They were ignored. Adam, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally stepped forward. To my surprise, he didn't join in the pressure campaign. She's right, he said quietly. Mom, Dad, she did say no. She was clear about it. We shouldn't have done this. My parents turned to him in unified shock. Adam, this is your wedding, my mother hissed. Don't take her side now. It's not about sides, he replied, looking genuinely uncomfortable. It's about the truth. We knew she didn't want this. We came anyway. That wasn't right. This unexpected support from Adam shifted the dynamic completely. Bridget turned to him incredulous. You knew this might happen and you didn't tell me. The confrontation was now splintering in multiple directions, with Bridget and her parents demanding explanations from Adam and my parents attempting damage control with various wedding guests who had approached to understand the delay. Through it all, I maintained my calm, standing firmly at the boundary of my property, supported by James and Lucia on either side, with Maria and the Hope Harbor team visible behind us. The contrast couldn't have been clearer between the chaos of my biological family's deception and the stable, supportive, chosen family I had built. We have a contract with the caterers. My father tried one last angle. We'll be liable for thousands in cancellation fees. That's unfortunate, I acknowledged. But it's the consequence of planning an event at a venue you didn't actually have permission to use. As the reality of the situation finally sank in, the wedding party began to disperse. Confused guests returned to their cars. Caterers packed up unused equipment, and Bridget's parents led her away. Intense conversation with Adam following behind. My brother turned once, meeting my eyes with a complex expression that held apology, regret, and perhaps a hint of newfound respect. My parents were the last to leave, my father's face rigid with suppressed rage, my mother's eyes brimming with angry tears. You've ruined everything, she spat. I hope you're satisfied. I didn't ruin anything, I replied evenly. I protected my boundaries, something I learned to do despite, not because of how you raised me. They finally departed without another word, leaving an odd silence in their wake. The security team reported that all wedding guests had left the property perimeter, and the charity event could continue undisturbed. As I walked back toward the fundraiser with James, Lucia, and Maria, a strange lightness filled my chest. The confrontation I had dreaded for days was over, and I had remained true to myself throughout. I hadn't crumbled under pressure or lost my composure. I had simply stood firm in my truth. You did it, Lucia whispered, squeezing my hand. We did it, I corrected her, filled with gratitude for my chosen family who had stood with me unflinchingly. The Hope Harbor fundraiser continued as planned, the earlier drama, adding an unexpected element of interest for attendees. By evening, as string lights twinkled in the trees and soft music played across the lawn, the event had raised nearly twice our target amount for youth housing programs. Standing by the lake, watching people enjoy my home in a way that aligned with my values, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. Later that evening, after most guests had departed, I received a text message from Adam. "Can we talk tomorrow? Just us." I stared at the phone for a long moment before replying. Coffee shop on Main Street. 11 a.m. Whatever came next with my family, I would face it on my terms, from a position of strength and self-respect. The pattern of control had been broken, perhaps for good. The morning after the confrontation dawned quiet and still. I awoke feeling strangely peaceful, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. The security team had departed, the temporary fencing removed, and my property returned to its normal state, though now imbued with new meaning after standing as the battleground for my long-overdue boundary setting. Local news coverage of the Hope Harbor fundraiser appeared online with brief mentions of the unexpected family disagreement that had preceded it. Social media buzzed with snippets of the confrontation captured by wedding guests. Most comments supporting my right to determine how my property was used. A few posts from more distant relatives painted me as the villain, but even those were met with reasonable people pointing out the absurdity of planning a wedding at someone's home without clear permission. The charity event itself was hailed as a tremendous success, raising awareness and substantial funds for youth housing programs. Maria called to express her gratitude, noting that the publicity had already led to new corporate sponsors reaching out to support their work. Something positive had emerged from the attempted invasion, a fitting transformation of negative energy into constructive outcomes. At 11 a.m., I arrived at the small coffee shop on Main Street for my meeting with Adam. I spotted him already seated in a corner booth, looking tired and subdued. As I approached, I noticed he seemed different somehow, less the golden child and more a man facing difficult realizations. "Thanks for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. "I was surprised you reached out," I admitted, studying his face for signs of our parents' influence. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Yesterday was enlightening in the worst possible way." "How so?" I asked cautiously, seeing Mom and Dad from the outside perspective, watching how they manipulated everyone, including me and Bridget. It was like suddenly seeing a pattern that's been there my whole life, but I was too close to recognize. I remained silent, allowing him space to continue his thought process without interruption. "The wedding's postponed, by the way," he added. "Bridget and I have some things to figure out." "I'm sorry if my actions caused problems for you," I said, though not entirely certain I meant it. "Don't apologize," he replied quickly. "You were right to do what you did. The apology should come from me." He met my eyes directly. "I'm sorry, Cass. Not just for the wedding fiasco, but for everything. For watching them throw you out and doing nothing. For benefiting from their favoritism all these years. For the way they treated you our entire childhood." His apology caught me off guard. In all my imaginings of this confrontation and its aftermath, I had never expected genuine remorse from Adam. "I always knew it was wrong," he continued quietly. "The way they favored me, the double standards. As a kid, I didn't know how to process it. As a teenager, I was selfish enough to enjoy the benefits. By the time I was old enough to really understand, the pattern was so established that changing it seemed impossible." "You could have reached out after they threw me out," I pointed out. A hint of the old hurt surfacing despite my best efforts. "I should have," he acknowledged. "I wanted to, but I was a coward. I was afraid of losing their approval, their support. It's not an excuse, just the pathetic truth." We sat in silence for a moment. The weight of years of family dysfunction hanging between us. "When did you start seeing a therapist?" I asked, recognizing the language of self-awareness. He looked surprised. "How did you know some of what you're saying?" "The insights, they sound like the realizations that come from good therapy." 3 months ago, he admitted when the wedding planning started getting intense. Bridget noticed how anxious I became whenever Mom and Dad got involved in decisions. She suggested I might benefit from talking to someone. He gave a rueful smile. She had no idea what she was unleashing. "Therapy has a way of making you see things you've been avoiding." I acknowledged, thinking of my own journey. "It's been overwhelming," he confessed, starting to understand how dysfunctional our family really is, how the dynamic shaped both of us in different ways. "You were the scapegoat. I was the golden child," But neither role was healthy. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, delving into shared childhood memories now viewed through adult perspectives, comparing notes on our parents' manipulation tactics, and carefully rebuilding a tentative connection as siblings rather than rivals. Adam revealed that his relationship with Bridget was under serious reconsideration. After yesterday, she saw exactly what you've dealt with. She's questioning whether she wants to marry into this family dynamic. And honestly, I don't blame her. What about her parents? I asked, remembering the distinguished couple who had seemed appalled by my parents' behavior. Mr. Williams pulled me aside afterward, Adam said with a grimace. Told me he'd never seen such appalling entitlement in his life. Said, if this was how my parents conducted themselves, he had serious concerns about his daughter's future happiness. That must have been difficult to hear, I observed. Necessary, though, Adam replied. Sometimes it takes an outsider to name what you've normalized. As our meeting drew to a close, Adam asked hesitantly, would it be possible to stay in touch? I understand if you're not ready for that. I considered his request carefully. I think we could try, I said finally, slowly on neutral ground like this and with very clear boundaries regarding our parents. Absolutely, he agreed quickly. This would be just between us. I'm not asking you to reconcile with them. Good, because that's not happening, I stated firmly. Yesterday wasn't a one-time event, Adam. It was the culmination of a lifetime of disrespect and manipulation. I've built a good life without them, and I intend to keep it that way. He nodded, understanding. For what it's worth, I think you've done amazing things with your life, the person you've become, your home, your career, your charity work. It's incredible, especially knowing what you started with. His genuine admiration meant more than I expected. Thank you. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. We parted with a tentative hug, both aware that rebuilding trust would be a long process with no guaranteed outcome. But for the first time since childhood, I felt a glimmer of possibility that Adam and I might eventually have some form of healthy sibling relationship. In the weeks that followed, my parents attempted various forms of retaliation. They sent a formal letter threatening legal action for emotional distress caused by the wedding cancellation, which my attorney quickly dismissed as groundless. They tried to contact my employer with vague allegations about my professional conduct, but my established reputation and portfolio spoke for themselves. They even attempted to turn extended family further against me, though the effect was minimal given our already estranged relationship. Each attempt at punishment only reinforced my conviction that maintaining distance was the healthiest choice. My therapist helped me process these events without being dragged back into old emotional patterns, focusing instead on my continued growth and the chosen family that had proven their worth during the crisis. James and Lucia remained steadfast supporters, checking in regularly and helping me celebrate the successful boundary setting rather than dwelling on the family drama. You should be incredibly proud, Lucia insisted during a dinner at her apartment. Standing up to family pressure is one of the hardest things anyone can do. My work with Hope Harbor expanded following the successful fundraiser. I joined their advisory board offering both architectural expertise for their housing projects and personal insight into the needs of young people facing housing insecurity. The connection between my past struggles and present stability created a meaningful bridge that allowed my hardships to serve a greater purpose. Adam and I continued our careful reconnection, meeting for coffee every few weeks, each time peeling back another layer of our complicated shared history. He began attending therapy sessions more frequently, working through his own issues as the former golden child and the complex guilt that role had created. We were building something new, neither fully healed nor completely broken, but honest in a way our relationship had never been before. 6 months after the confrontation, I hosted another event at my home. This time, a small gathering of my chosen family to celebrate 5 years of home ownership. As twilight fell and we sat on the deck overlooking the lake, glasses raised in toast, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. To boundaries, James proposed, raising his glass higher. To chosen family, Lucia added. To writing your own story, I concluded, regardless of how others try to define you. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear or without challenges. Family wounds don't heal overnight, and setting boundaries isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. Yet, I had proven to myself and others that I could stand firm in my truth, protect what I had built, and transform attempts at control into opportunities for growth. In refusing to host my brother's wedding, I had actually hosted something far more important, my own liberation from toxic family patterns. That freedom was worth more than any momentary peace that might have come from compliance, worth more than any superficial family reunion built on continued disrespect. I continue to build and strengthen my chosen family, those relationships based on mutual respect, genuine care, and healthy boundaries. I focus on using my story to help others who have experienced family rejection or homelessness, turning pain into purpose. And I remain open to authentic connection with those who demonstrate true change, including my brother, while protecting myself from those who remain committed to manipulation and control. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you stay strong when they tried to push back? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about maintaining boundaries and building a life on your own terms. Remember that your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see your value. And sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in writing your own story.